So yeah, we'll basically go through a very similar thing, but a slightly different technique. I've purposely chosen quite a clean-ish kick drum, and then the MIDI, which I'll do again actually, and we'll do that again. This one is a reverb layer, so I put on hybrid reverb, 100% wet convolution, and I'm sure one of these. One of these, and I'm actually liking that one, so I'm going to grab that as well. And then I think I brought down the width a little bit. So I'll do the MIDI first. This was a case of doing a 16th note pattern. And then doing again a little bit of a variation. So this one was something like this. And this one we started low. And then this one was accented. And then this one lower. Then we grabbed, I don't want to erase something. So yeah, I went pretty heavy on this. So it's the bigger spaces, arena hall, and then I've turned the decay down a bit and bring the width down significantly on both of these. And then I've done the same thing where I'm increasing the input and then reducing the output. And like, yeah, this is a case like trying to smear the sound and get really kind of thick atonal low to mids area, and to help with that I've then increased the vintage and then the noise, so we'll listen to it. And then we're actually going to just go with an EQ and cut out a lot of that extra noise, but it kind of helps give a lot of body to the sound around here. So maybe ended up with one too many reverb layers here. I'm going to make sure that at least one of them is mono, so that we've not got too much width. And then yeah, this should do. And now it will be a good idea to compress, do sidechain compression on this one directly from the kick. What I'm doing here, moving this around, this can be very beneficial for getting quite an interesting groove. I'll do it with this as well. Yeah, I like that. So it's kind of quite late sweeping in. We might want to deal with this here. So we've got it essentially reserved for the kick. Do that with compression or just in audio like that. But I think compression will sound better. Sidechain compression. And then let's dial this one in as well. So I'd be tempted to treat some of these sounds individually, but mainly EQ and dynamics processing is usually all that's required. Well, not usually all that's required. Let's consider this sound. So I'll set now. This is probably all the elements, not all, yeah, probably all the elements that I'm going to want to use. But we're going to start driving it to get some kind of character and tone out of it. So I'll set the kick around -11 is fine. I think this kick does need a bit of work. Like I said, it's a very clean kick to start with. I'm going to add a bit of transient to it. Okay, I think ultimately I'm going to need a better kick straight up, something with a cleaner punch. To make it easier, I'm going to put a MIDI pattern in, and then we can just switch it out. Yeah, that's better. A clean transient and short. Okay, we have a minor issue in that we have changed our sidechain source. I was wondering what was going on. Okay, I am going to put one more layer in. In that pack, there is some Amen samples. These are always great for filling up the frequency spectrum. So I'm just going to get a really short section. And I think pretty much everything now is sidechained from the kick. So really get like sidechaining everything to really get the pumping sound. Yeah, that where that snare is, I think is going to be perfect, which is hitting here. So usually filling up this with something like quite high pitched and percussive can give a good scrange feeling. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. I brought up a transient designer before, transient shaper, which you can add attack with. You can't do that here, but you can reduce sustain. So if you go beats, transients, and then the right arrow, you get basically manages the sustain. Okay. Develop Deluxe. You have some Sound Toys stuff, do you?
Yeah,
So yeah, I love the Sound Toys stuff. I've got here, like I say, it's like this processing rack is like fairly light touch, but also kind of aggressive at the same time. So this is just a brutal sound processor. The mix is only like 1.5. This darkness basically is a high pass filter, takes some of the kind of harshness away. And then we've got the crush and the crunch, which is like two kind of different flavors. So So yeah, if you do have that, it's great for this kind of processing, but typically less is more at this kind of stage. So like I say, it's light touch, but it ends up being pretty aggressive. This doesn't have a gain knob on it, so I've used a utility to bring the gain down afterwards. And then a clipper. So it's doing very little here because it's not been set up. Not a completely necessary stage, but it's like one of those extra little stages that just pulls up the volume a little bit. Again, bringing down by -1 just to give us some final headroom. And this is like an analog style, adding a little bit of lows, a little bit of highs, and a little bit of drive. That would look something like this if we were to do it in a curve. Just to give you an idea, that like this has a name. It's called Smiley. It's used a lot in mastering, like this kind of thing, boost the highs and the lows. Yeah, it can sound very pleasant for one reason or another. And then Pro L2, so setting the output to be -10. That's the maximum I'm going to want my kick and drums to be, and then increasing the gain until we get a bit of gain reduction, but not too much, and bringing the release down. Cool. So I just want to add in one more thing that will hopefully demonstrate good way to use compression and just kind of get you into the habit of using compression and limiting for this reason. So I'm going to use a mastering EQ. So yeah, I use this in mastering. The ratio goes only up to 7, whereas like the Ableton one goes up to infinity. The glue compressor, I think, goes up to 10. And that's, this is more like the glue compressor style. But if I set what is still a fairly high ratio of 5, and then I'll bring down the threshold, and I won't go into too much about the fact that there's two different release times, but we'll get the release time quick. Do this pre-limiter. Okay, so when I turn that on, it's taking 2 dB of gain away. So I'll put that on either the output or the makeup, 2 dB. Okay, and you can probably hear now that it's getting like a real pumping sound. So this is like in traditional senses, this would be considered over the top and not correct, but this is like basically the abuse of software over the years has enabled us to do this to make super energetic sounds. So there's a delta button here. So this shows you what the compression is actually doing. By the way, this is a free plugin. There's a paid version, but you can get a free version as well. Well worth grabbing it. So I'm going to take a audio recording of that so we can actually see what the compression's doing. So resampling. So it's actually a little bit more obvious if you zoom out, but this is the compressed signal and this is the uncompressed signal. Bearing in mind, I say that, but we have done certain processes like saturation is basically a very rudimentary form of compression. We don't have the attack and release times, but we are squashing the sound and flattening it to a certain extent when doing compression. So if we look a bit closer on the transients, it's like clamped down a little bit here and just generally flattened. So ultimately we need to be very careful with compression, but if you compare the two different like we're getting into really micro analysis here, but this goes a little bit quieter, a little bit quicker, and it kind of makes the transient more prominent. Just have a quick listen to these. So that's a compressed one. Something a bit louder. So you might like hear this and go, yeah, that's good and it's fine. And that works for you, but you'd like there is options to go even further. And that this is getting into the answer about processing individual sounds or groups. So there is some processing on the individual sounds, but it's really the group processing that gives the vibe, the power, the feeling, and can increase groove as well. For me, that's got more energy, the more compressed version, or higher energy, should we say. That, and then we can go into the limiter. So just to talk about this a little bit more top down, I've created the sounds and then I've mixed them a little bit, processed them a little bit, got them sitting where I want without doing any group processing or that you're staying at around -10. But as I've developed this technique, I've liked to leave a little bit. So we're coming in at -2. We're giving ourselves 2 dB of room to kind of add color and stuff with the processing and the final limiting being the key.